Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvot tzivanu l'asuk b'divrei Torah. Varevna Adonai Eloheinu divrei Torah b'finu b'fiv beit Yisrael, v'niyeh anachnu v'tzetzenu v'tzetzenu b'chabed Yisrael. Kulani yodei shemecha v'yodei Toratech lishma. Baruch atah Adonai l'mei Torah l'mo Yisrael.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai melech haolam. Asher b'chabal mikol amim v'natan lanu Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten Torah.
Amen.
Okay, so we're going to get started. Gavin, I don't know if it's going to cover the halacha of what you need, but let me just give you some of the halachas from Halachapedia, just quickly on Kiddush Levana. In terms of exactly when, that you might just have to speak to Rabbi Alba. Let me just read to you what it's got here. During the beginning of the lunar month, the moon is situated between the earth and the sun, thus causing the illuminated side of the moon to face away from the earth. A few days into the new moon, the moon makes its appearance gradually until it reaches its fullness, when it then wanes again. Our sages instituted that upon seeing the moon as its first stages, after the renewal, one is to recite a blessing called Birkat HaLevana, the blessing of the moon, or Kiddush Levana. The monthly ritual is performed outdoors at night in the first half of the month, in which this blessing, along with a series of additional prayers, are recited for the new moon. The source of this blessing appears in the Talmud in Sanhedrin 42a, where the sages equate one who blesses the new moon on its proper time to one who greets the divine presence. The commentators explain that by reciting the blessing of the new moon, one in essence recalls that it is God who created the universe, and this realization is turned in tantamount to experiencing the divine presence. Another aspect of this ritual is in order for us to internalize a significant lesson that emerges when comparing the history of the nation of Israel and the cycle of the moon. So just as the moon is reborn after a period of its decrease and extinction, so too our nation declines will end, and its light will once again radiate in full vibrancy. This ritual, in effect, instills in the hearts much needed message of hope. So I think what it's just trying to say in plain English is that just when it looks like it's going to be darkness and the darkness will never dissipate, it's in fact the starting point of the full strength of the moon. Just quickly, basics. Before we do the basics, I just wanted to say when it should be said. Gav, I found it. Says the Molad for Tevet 5781, which is now, is 5:34 p.m. Jerusalem time on Wednesday, the 13th of January 2021. And the latest time for Kiddush Levana for Sephardim is 5:34. Jerusalem time on Thursday, the 28th of January. And for Ashkenazim, 11:56 a.m. Jerusalem time on Thursday, the 28th of January. So you've got quite a bit of time, it seems.
So we've got right till the end of the month, basically, to do this.
Well, it seems that. I mean, if it seems it comes in, the Molat.
But can't you only say it when there's actually a full moon, though? I mean, you can't say it when it's... Oh.
The moon has to be visible. Huh?
And it has to be full, doesn't it?
Yeah, I'm just going to read it now. According to Ashkenazim, one may recite the bracha 3 days after the Molad, which is exactly what Kevin said. However, according to Sephardim in general, one should wait until 7 days after the Molad, which are counted in context of 24-hour periods. It's proper to wait until Motzei Shabbos to recite Kiddush HaLevana. So it looks like, Kev, that they're going to say it probably the Saturday night if there was shul.
Yeah.
If there was shul.
Yeah, that's 3 days. So it's basically the first Shabbos after Rosh Chodesh. Possibly if it's 2 days, you can't say it yet. But if it's 3 days or more Shabbos, then you say it on. So you rather wait for Shabbos after Motzei Shabbos. So if it happens on Monday, Rosh Chodesh, it's about 4 days or 5 days.
Yeah.
Then you wait for Motzei Shabbos. If it happens 3 days before, same thing, Motzei Shabbos. If it's 2 days before Shabbos, I guess you say it on Sunday.
That's why it can't be tomorrow night because it's only 48 hours. Motzei Shabbos tomorrow night, only 48 hours. And they
But
usually
then the
say,
guys will do it the following Shabbos then. Because
that's right,
it's-
exactly. That's okay.
I'll do it in 2 weeks' time. I actually
Or that-
noticed that when it's Rosh Chodesh, we very seldom say, because Rosh Chodesh, I don't know, it seems to fall like a lot on like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, later in the week. I don't know, it probably jumps around, but it seems to be more. And in this case, I often find that it's not that Shabbos, it's the second Shabbos that you end up saying it after Rosh Chodesh.
Can I say something interesting about Rosh Chodesh? This
Sure.
month, Damon, I don't know if you're familiar, Arthur and Gavin, it's been 3 months in a row that it's only been 1 day. And it hasn't happened. I don't know if you've noticed, and I asked my cousin about that. It's 3 29-day months in succession. And it usually, and at Rosh Chodesh, say if it's on a Friday, next month will be Shabbos. It's always the day following for the following month. But it's usually, if it's 1 day, then the next month will be 2 days Rosh Chodesh. So it's like very weird that it's been 3 months in a row. That it's been 1 day only.
Sure.
I think it's got something to do with lockdown.
The Havdil Groundhog Day.
Are you allowed to use the word hog in a shiur?
Yeah, not Groundhog Day, ground Teglach, ground
Flower.
Ozniot Day.
Ground Cholent Day. Cholent Day. Yeah.
Ozniot Day.
Ozniot.
All right.
Okay.
As I tell you, we're starting. We spent yesterday dealing with Arthur's actual questions, which are very important. I think we all shared the same sentiments. We're on 26a2. I'm going to read a different Kal V'chomer that is expounded. The Gemara considers why a different Kal V'chomer is not expounded. But a person who kills somebody should be obligated to pay the Kofer, as can be derived through the following Kal V'chomer. If in the case of an ox, which one is not obligated to pay the 4 things, one is obligated to pay Kofer if he kills a person. Then in the case of a person who is obligated to pay 4 things, in addition to the actual damage, is it not logically compelling that he's obligated to pay Kofer if he kills a person? Okay, so before I put the Kal V'chomer, let's just do a little bit of recap what Kofer actually is. Does everybody remember what Kofer is?
Yeah,
Full payment?
I do.
Yeah, it's a
What is
payment.
it, Gav?
It's compensation payment.
No, it's not. It's not quite
Full.
compensation payment.
It's for all those,
But
isn't it for all those things? It's for being out of work, for all those things. Remember, there's like a list of 4
no,
Oh,
no.
okay. Okay,
But-
sorry.
But no, nothing wrong. What I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna bring up the verse and tell you where it was. I don't know where the heck the tab went, but I've got it now. Excellent. 1:29. Okay, I'm going to share my screen and explain to you what it is. We have done it before. Okay. All right. If, however, that ox has been in the habit of goring, and its owner, though warned, has failed to guard it, and it kills a man or a woman, the ox shall be stoned, and its owner too shall be put to death. Okay. So this is a very, very strange thing to say. It also says, if ransom is laid upon him, he must pay whatever is laid upon him to redeem his life. Now, this is a very, very dangerous sort of pasuk to read literally, because when you read it properly, it looks like if an ox is muad. Why? Because it has been in the habit of goring, and the owner ignored the warnings, and it killed a man or a woman. The ox is put to death, stoned, and its owner too shall be put to death. Now, the problem is when you've got a literal explanation, I'm sure there were the early Christians that quite readily took it literally. Now, literally means that you're putting the ox to death, and two, the owner should be put to death. But what we're saying here in the following verse, this is the Hekesh, is if ransom is laid upon him, he must pay whatever is laid upon him to redeem his life. So why are we saying that he should be put to death? Well, one simple reason. Well, this is what has been happening. Now, Kofer payment is a payment regarding, some say it's a compensation, some say it's a penalty, etc. But the bottom line of it, some say it's for the family of the deceased, and some say it's for the person's kapora, etc., etc. This is the general opinion of what it is. You are responsible in the Chumash when your ox has been a habitual damager. You have been indirectly responsible for somebody's death. You've had a habit of being warned. Your animal has had a habit of creating serious damage, and now it's eventually killed somebody. So they're going to hold you responsible, Shemaim, to the degree that you could have prevented the loss of this human life. Why? Because all the signs were there. You were warned 3 times already. How many times do you have to be warned? This thing created serious damage. So the ox is stoned because the ox has done the direct killing. That's number 1. Number 2, you cannot get any hanoah, any benefit from the animal. You can't even feed it to the dogs, as the expression says in the Gemara, where you could use it for at least satiating your animals with the meat. Never mind sell the meat or use the product in any way. Further to which, you have to pay a Kofer payment, which could almost bankrupt you. Okay? And the reason being is, you remember it said once that if somebody's poor, really poor, it's as if they're dead.
Yes.
I don't know if you remember when, if you look at the Pasha with Yaakov and Esav's son took every physical item away from Yaakov, all his wealth, etc. And it was Yaakov's suggestion. He said, you can tell your father that this virtually killed me, sort of thing. I'm paraphrasing. Meaning that somebody that goes through tremendous financial hardship, they aren't as effectual as emotionally, financially, as when they were very strong and could contribute in the way that they would love to, the worries involved, etc. So the Kofer payment is known as an atonement for the soul. In other words, this is a payment where you should lose your life in this world and pay. But because it's what you call groma, indirect death penalty, and through stupidity and negligence and a lack of sensitivity, you're responsible for the death of this person. And therefore, you have to pay the Kofer payment. And I think the Kofer payment wasn't kept by the Beis Din or Sanhedrin. I think it went to the family as compensation. But the primary reason isn't compensation, because I think you had to compensate the family financially anyway. Just the proof of it is as follows. If you have to compensate for your animal doing injury to another person or another animal, then obviously you have to compensate in death. I mean, that goes without saying. So I think this was seen as additional compensation, but the reason for it was primarily Kofer, for atonement for the person that should be actually be given the death penalty for causing the death of another Jewish man or woman. And he can't be given the death penalty because his animal caused it directly. In other words, even if you hire a hitman and you take somebody out, the hitman knows that it's wrong to kill. We give him the death penalty, and Hashem will deal with the person that hired the hitman in Shemaim, because he never created the direct act. So I don't think the person's getting away with it. To a certain extent, when a person suffers from the death penalty that's given to him, it's a kapara for his soul that he pays for it in this world to mitigate some of the, or all of, depending on how much teshuvah he did. If he didn't do teshuvah, it doesn't count for him. It doesn't help him. But if he did a true teshuvah, the teshuvah mixed with him giving his life. There's no such thing as doing teshuvah after murder and then no longer feeling regret and no longer having to lose one's life as a result. So being given the death sentence, carried out, and the teshuvah helps cleanse a person's soul from the murder that they caused. So a person that thinks they got away with it because the hitman got the death penalty hasn't. It's almost like Adam Zumamin. They just don't have the opportunity for the right sort of kapora of losing their life for it. So Kofer payment is a kapora for their negligence. Okay, is that clear to everybody before we go on to the next concept?
Yeah, so I got the one part right. Sorry, I left out the other part.
No. This is we did.
No, that's the more important point. Yeah,
we did a long time
ago.
It's
a kapora. Yeah, I forgot. It is a kapora. Thank you.
Okay, so you could see that was in Shmot, chapter 21, verse 29 to 30. Okay. Now, now there's a case. What are we talking about this comparison to 4 things and 5 things and everything else. So let's just get this again clear. Is that if a person smacks his fellow human being and injures him, if your ox damages somebody, you only have to pay nezek shalom, the actual damage. Okay? The actual damage. The full damage, but actual damage. If a human being hits another person, if a Jew hits a Jew, there are 4 additional payments that you have to make. And this is in the Mishnah in 83b in Bava Kamma. It's also expounded in 33a. And it's in, it talks about only if the animal injures a person, and then the owner pays for the actual damage. That's in Shemot chapter 21, verse 31. Okay? But the actual discussion of these 4 things plus actual damage is as follows. A person who injures someone else has to pay his victim 5 things in total. Actual damage, at which that you pay whether your animal damages another Jew or you damage another Jew. That's actual damage, nezek shalom. Then there is pain, tsar. So for the actual physical pain, there's an amount. Let me just give you an analogy, which Rabbi Cohen gave me. Say Ahmed had his hands in the cookie jar and is now going to have his hand chopped off. And Ahmed is being pushed in the town square the next day, and they're going to machete his hands off. Now, the guy that chops the hands off has built himself a good financial backing of wealth, and he earns more than general guys at the butchery to chop off hands and, castrations and all sorts of lovely things. So how did he earn so much money? Well, he used to go to the guys and say, listen, this is going to hurt a real lot. You have no idea how much it's going to hurt. What I'm going to do is I'm going to offer you an amount to pay me to actually give you a lot of benzodiazepines and alcohol, so you're not going to feel it as badly. Because when we chop your hands off, you're going to bleed to death unless we, what you call cauterize the wound. You know that they had to do that. You don't just chop a hand off. You've got to have a hot piece of metal and go shh to seal it, otherwise the person bleeds to death. So that couldn't have been a fun experience. So the guy that's about to chop the hand off machete and cauterize the wound says, you're going to pay me a lot of money if you want the pain to go away. How much is this worth to you? Let's start the bidding. So that's what you call the pain payment, is that you pay a certain amount for the pain that you cause somebody. Okay. I'm just using that example that Rabbi Cohen used to give you an idea that sometimes to avoid pain, we pay a fortune. Okay. So that's the second one. Then you've got what you call medical costs, refuah. So medical costs is obviously a small fortune in and of itself, because you need doctors, surgeries, etc., etc. Now, then we have what you call loss of employment, shevet. So that means that the convalescing period of time, the time it takes to recover from that, is what you have to pay for. Then what you call is you've got humiliation. Now, humiliation is only paid in certain cases. If person A hits person B in public, that person is embarrassed and humiliated. If person A hits person B in a dark alley after a discussion at the bar when he was insulted, there's no humiliation payment, because he loses consciousness all on his very own. It's not in front of all his mates. Okay, so that's what you call the humiliation. It's not always applied. In terms of actual damage, we do discuss in further dafim in 83 what's considered, but in principle, you've got to bear in mind that if a person was a scribe and was earning a certain amount with his hands because he had a unique skill set, and now his hand is rendered useless because you baseball batted it, and now he's got the claw, In that particular case, he ain't the scribe anymore. And since he ain't the scribe, he's going to watch vegetable patches. So there's a difference of what he would earn as a scribe compared to the vegetable patch watching for rabbits. So what you do is you have to pay him for the difference of what would have been worth of what he would have earned before to what he would have earned now. Now, apparently, it's what he would have been worth before when he was fully functional on the slave market versus what he's worth now on the slave market. Why do we work on the slave market? Because if the guy was a cardiovascular surgeon, there goes your income for the next 50 years. And now he's watching vegetable patches. So I think they work out a happy medium between what he would be worth, as when we say, Kev, before you ask, when we say the slave market, we mean on the employee market. So if somebody had their own business, but what that service would be worth working for somebody else, it's not the same level of payment. So, but it's still heavy. So we want to work out a compromise between the two. So in other words, what that previous person would have been worth on the job market versus what they're worth now on the job market, not what they would have been worth in their own business. Now, whether that's fair or not, that person's still earning and bankrupting the other person as a result of this injury. So nobody's getting off here with a holiday, I promise you.
Can I just ask you a quick question?
There's two, I
No, Kevin had a question first.
I missed the first.
Well, there's 2 points. There's 2 points.
Sorry,
One thing was
Kevin had a question first. Yeah.
2 things. You described that very well.
Thank you.
And secondly,
I get it.
Yeah.
Did you get that, Arthur?
That was very high level, Kevin. Well done.
And secondly, but how can, if somebody's lost the full functionality of their limbs, how can they be a slave? So cardiovascular surgeon, how would he? Maybe I missed something. How would he be? How would he be able to work as?
Okay, let me give you an example.
He might as well still be a surgeon.
I mean, you're not using the term on the slave market because we don't even understand what that means now. But what I would compare it to is on the job market, is that having your own business providing that service and working for somebody else where they paid you for those services would be a different hourly, monthly fee. You know what I'm saying? And it would be different. What somebody would own in their own graphic design business would be different to how much they would be paid as a graphic designer. That's number one. So let's use that as in the job market, what they were worth then and what they're worth now, not in their own business, because it's got to also be fair to the person paying. That's number one. Number two, what are we saying that the guy's useless? He's not useless. If, for example, somebody is an artist or a scribe, their particular hand has developed over 20 years a particular skill. Now they can't use that right hand anymore for that skill. They might still be able to type letters or do things, but not with that same amount of talent, because that hand has now been rendered dysfunctional in comparison to 20 years worth of muscle memory skill it had. Does that make sense? It doesn't mean they can't write with their left or whatever.
Okay.
They're certainly not going to become an artist or a scribe where they're going to get every letter perfect, because they spent the last 30 years using their right hand, and now they can't, so they can't be a scribe. But it doesn't mean you hit them with the bat in the head till they're mentally retarded. If they're mentally retarded, then even watching a bunny in a vegetable patch is going to be a challenge. So, all right. Maybe my tax should be a bit better. But the thing of it is that it's rendered earning far less than they would have earned. Okay. So now that we understand the basic principle, Gavin had a question. We're going to do
No, mine's not a question. I just missed something. Sorry. I got distracted here, my network connection. Just the very, very first point. There were 4 things, like humility, compensation, all of that. What is the first point? I missed that.
Okay, so if your ox damages somebody or you damage someone, the first thing that everybody pays for, whether a person damages or an ox, is called nezek shalem, full payment for actual damage. It's the actual damage.
That's the actual. So I missed that. Sorry, I didn't actually hear you. I was busy doing something. I didn't hear the whole thing. No problem. So the 4 extra things is what's payable if a person hits another person. Okay. I'm kind of giving a clue to the answer by phrasing it like, person survives. That. Now we're going to go to where this person doesn't survive.
I know what you're thinking. Maybe it's cheaper to have killed the person. But the problem
I don't know. We're going to see now. Are we not covering that?
No. Well, look, the problem is, Gavin, a person that kills a person gets the death penalty.
Gavin, he's dead serious about that.
He's dead serious. So the thing of it is, you save money, and you will and your kids will enjoy the money while you're in Shemaim after or Gehinnom after they give the person the death penalty. Please,
and
God, may
how
you
would you
always
Kaddish?
mention my name, not Gehenna.
And they must do Kaddish for 3 years for you, your children.
So listen, all right, so let's get to the daf. I kind of gave the answer away with the way I described it, because I put a lot of detail in the description. So let me just give you the Bava Kamma again, okay? I probably gave you the answer a bit, which I shouldn't have, but in the way I described it. But we'll share the sourcing now. Okay. Here's a different Bava Kamma that's expounded. There's a person who kills somebody. If a person kills someone, he should be obligated to pay Kofer. Okay? Now, Kofer is what you pay when you're negligent and your animal kills a person after being warned. Your animal is muad, you were warned, your animal kept creating a problem, and now it's killed somebody, and you pay Kofer as an atonement. So it says, but a person who kills somebody should also pay the Kofer payment, right? It says, as can be derived through the following Bava Kamma. If in the case of an ox, which one is not obligated to pay the 4 things. In other words, you just pay if your ox injures somebody, Gavin, you only pay actual damage, but you're not required to pay for pain, medical cost, loss of employment, and humiliation. Are you with me? If your ox injures somebody. But you are obligated to pay Kofer if it kills a person. So then, in the case of a person who is obligated for these 4 additional things, apart from the actual damage, isn't it logically compelling that he's obligated to pay Kofer if he kills a person? Why then is it generally accepted that a person who kills someone does not pay Kofer under any circumstances? Can you guys give me the Bava Kamma back?
So just repeat the question. Why is it? What's the question again?
No, I'm repeating the Bava Kamma. Did everybody understand the Bava Kamma? All right,
yes. No, I can explain it, I think.
Just repeat it. Can you just repeat it? I lost track for 10 seconds.
Let me repeat it for Kabb. All right. A person who kills somebody should be obligated to pay Kofer.
Okay.
As you can derive through the following logic, Bava Kamma even more so. If in a case of an ox which is not obligated to pay for additional things, in addition to the actual damage if it injures somebody, but in the case where if it kills a person, it's obligated to pay Kofer, then surely in the case of a person who is obligated to pay for 4 things in addition to the actual damage, if he injures his fellow, is it not logically compelling that he should be also obligated to pay Kofer if he kills a person?
Well, that is the Bava Kamma. You just gave it to us.
I know, Gav, didn't understand it.
Yeah, no.
I didn't hear it. I didn't hear it. You spoke too quickly.
Okay,
go.
All right. So, guys, it's very simple. I'm going to break up the Bava Kamma in my own words. This will help. It's not as eloquent as the Gemara, but it might help. So, it's saying exactly like Arthur said. Arthur got the first part perfect. But a person who kills someone should be obligated to pay Kofer, as can be derived through the following Bava Kamma. This is the logic. If in a case where my ox injures another person, I'm not obligated to pay for the 4 additional things apart from actual damage, right? But I'm obligated to pay for Kofer if my muad ox kills that person. Then why in a case when a person hits another person, that they're obligated to pay for not only the actual damage, but those 4 additional things, which is pain, medical bills, convalescing, and humiliation. If you have to pay those other things, then why, if a person actually kills another person, isn't he obligated to also pay the Kofer payment? Because if he injures him, he has to pay all these other things. And yet, if a person's ox kills another person, he has to pay the Kofer. Why shouldn't a person pay the Kofer if he kills another person? Because, what he's paying already in injuries is far more hectic than if an ox kills a person. He should know better.
I was actually going to say that. I was going to actually bring that up before you asked Arthur.
No, you are. I know you.
We all are. It's just
I heard that, but I don't understand it. It's like I mean, I read over it. I know what it's saying. I just don't understand how to apply it into the thing. It's just like, I mean, I know the wording, but how
Do you understand it now that I've explained it?
I hear it. I just still don't understand it properly. It's like like I said, my brain takes a while to wrap around things, and then once it gets it, it says, "Aha, you know me. We've been doing this for a while."
Okay, so I'm not going to repeat it again. All I'm saying here is as follows: is a kol v'chomer means that in a case where we found something going from lenient to more hectic, or from hectic to lenient, why isn't the principle applied in this case? That's what you have to ask yourself with the kol v'chomer. So it's saying, listen, if an ox injures a person, I can completely understand in that case there's only actual damage. But if a person smashes his fellow person, he has to pay medical bills, pain, humiliation, recovery, actual damage. The oak will go broke. So in that case, then you can see that what a man is paying for injuring his fellow is far more than what a person's ox pays. The owner of the ox pays for his ox injuring a fellow.
Okay.
So yeah, I only have to pay for actual damage to what I caused you if my ox injures a person. Injures you. That's all I have to pay is the actual damage, not all these other things. So obviously, if a human hits another human, it's a far more hectic penalty of all these payments for injury than if my ox hits you. I just have to pay the actual damage. So since there's 5 things in total I pay if I hit you, compared to if my ox hits you, where there's only the actual damage, we can see a person injuring another person is far more hectic. So it's saying then, why does it seem like it's more hectic? Because if my ox kills a person, I have to pay the Kofer payment, which almost make me go broke. Plus, I can't get benefit from the animal once it's stoned, etc. But if I kill a person, I don't have to pay the Kofer payment, which seems very lenient. So if in the case of injury, where I'm paying far more if I hit a person than if my ox injures somebody, then why in a case where if my ox kills somebody, I have to pay this hectic Kofer, but if a person kills somebody, you don't have to pay the Kofer. Because in injury, it seems like there's more hectic payments, but in fact, you're getting away with not paying the Kofer payment. Do you understand it now?
Yeah, I understand it now. It's just confusing on why it's so different. Why does that? Oh, my cat's in the gill. Why is it so less stringent? Well, not less stringent, but when you kill someone, it should be more.
But you got the Kabb. Hang on, Kev, one sec. Arthur, you got the Kabb v'chomer now. When you start asking why is it so different, I know your light has switched on.
Yeah.
Because you can see now that there's a disparaging difference between why you're paying so hectic if you injure somebody versus your property injuring somebody, and yet if a person kills another person, he seems to get off lighter than if his ox kills another person, because you pay the Kofer if your ox kills somebody, but if you kill somebody, you don't pay the Kofer.
Yeah, why then?
Great, Arthur's got it. Kev, what's your question? You get it.
How can you pay humiliation and other things that the person's did? There's no humiliation.
No, it's not saying
you know what I mean? No, I'm just saying. I'm saying for the Kofer.
Keep the issue.
No, even more so. Why should it be more stringent for an ox than for a human?
Yes, now you got the Kabb v'chomer. I'm happy. You've got it.
Humans are more important. It's a more serious action. Okay.
Exactly. But now you've got the Kabb v'chomer. Guys, we've got 5 minutes left.
Gavin hasn't had a chance to talk. We've hijacked Gavin.
No, you guys have covered it. You guys have covered it.
Gavin's covered it. All right. Sorry, Gav, but okay, we got 4 minutes left.
No, I'd rather the guys get it. It's great.
Okay. The verse states concerning the payment of Kofer, whatever shall be assessed against him, from which we derive against him, but not against a person who kills somebody. So let me just explain to you what this actually means, okay? Now, in Numbers chapter 35, verse 31 to 32, which I can always show you tomorrow, just now, a killer can't pay Kofer in order to free himself from the death penalty, which is otherwise liable. Okay, so the person isn't getting away with anything. you've got Kimle B'di Rabba Minne. That's in Sanhedrin. So you stand liable to the penalty greater than the payment. So what's happening is if a person kills another person, they're liable to the death penalty. So therefore, this heavy Kofer payment is irrelevant. They're paying with their life. So the Kofer payment is meant to be an atonement payment. But a person paying with their life for murder has that atonement within the death penalty that they're given. So the Kofer doesn't need to be given, and they don't have to pay monetary payment because of this law, Kimle B'di Rabba Minne, which means you stand liable to the penalty greater, that you can't you can't incur a death penalty and monetary liability simultaneously for the same act.
Okay. Listen, can I just make a comment?
Yeah, all right.
Just one thing. I agree with that 100%, but the problem is that the actual family, if the breadwinner, and I've covered that law and I understand it and I respect it, but the problem is the family still loses out because
they don't. I'm sure they get financial.
Let's say their father was a CEO of a company and now he's not. So, and you've killed him. He could have got a job somewhere else. The family loses out. I'm saying of the deceased.
Gav, we haven't covered the rules to find out yet if the family gets compensated financially through the heirs or anything like that, or what's happening as far as that.
But I thought we closed that off by saying that the death penalty supersedes any other penalty that he might have.
No. He doesn't. What I'm saying to you is as follows: is that the heirs might not be entitled to an inheritance and have to give a certain amount to the victim's family.
Okay, I got it. Okay. All right.
Which means that you are absolutely correct that he doesn't personally have to pay because he's suffering the death penalty, according to Kimle B'di Rabba Minne. But we haven't learned enough to know if instead of the children profiting from the inheritance, they don't have to make some sort of restitution to the family, the heirs.
Okay. Will possibly come out of the estate.
Yeah. So what we're saying is, how could it be?
If the ox kills, the reason why it's different, it seems to be that if the ox kills you paying financially, like till you've got nothing left, so like that's one way of like giving like your life. Another one, if you kill a person, you're actually physically killing with your life, which is the other one. So that's correct. Your payment.
Correct. That's the atonement. That is absolutely dead on the mark. Okay. Correct. And I'm going to share a verse with you quickly. Arthur, read this. If anyone,
but it's only atonement if he does tshuva before he gets killed.
Yes, absolutely. If he doesn't use that opportunity,
then it's not kapara.
Okay. Right. If anyone kills a person, the manslayer may be executed only on the evidence of witnesses. The testimony of a single witness against a person shall not suffice for a sentence of death. You may not accept a ransom for the life of a murderer who is guilty of a capital crime. He must be put to death.
Okay, so this answers two questions, guys, just very quickly. Is that if he murders a person, you can't accept a ransom like a Kofer payment. Okay, that's called the ransom for his life. If he's guilty of a capital crime against another human being, there's only payment is the death penalty and teshuvah, which should go with the death penalty. You can't pay a kofer in the place of him paying with his life. You only pay a kofer if it's if basically your animal kills a person and you're spiritually responsible because this animal has been a habitual gorer and it was a death waiting to happen, so to speak. Okay, so Arthur understood it perfectly. Great. Listen, there's another thing, Kevin and Arthur and Gavin, I wanted to tell you. This is something you've got to bear in mind. If anyone kills a person, the manslayer may be executed on the evidence of witnesses. The testimony of a single witness against a person shall not suffice for a sentence of death. So let me tell you where this question comes up now on a very, very real level. Say a person kills another person at which they should be given the death penalty of.
Yeah.
Right? But you can't because in a Jewish court of law, you need two witnesses. So he doesn't get the death penalty then because the Sanhedrin cannot convict him. Or they never gave him Hazroa. They never gave him a forewarning about that it's a capital crime and what he's doing is wrong and he's worthy of the death penalty. They never gave him a warning. You have to give warning and you need 2 witnesses. Does that make sense? There's certain procedures in order to convict somebody to the death penalty. Right.
That's quite hard, actually.
It's quite hard. So what we're saying is here, guys, Reuven killed Shimon. There was only a Levi that saw it. Okay? Menachem went to go and get a hot beef and rye. He missed the action. So Reuven cannot be put to death for the murder of Shimon. Why? Because it was only Levi that witnessed the homicide. Fine. So what we're asking is now, in a case where he wouldn't get the death penalty because the Sanhedrin cannot convict him, why can't he at least pay the kapora of a Kofer in addition to Teshuvah to have some sort of atonement? I can't hear any of you.
Dan, maybe because he doesn't deserve it, so that he's not going to get any redemption in this life or the next.
Excellent. So there's a discussion in the Gemara exactly according to the one opinion that Otto had, that there's a whole discussion with Chizkiah's academy and the opposing academy. So the opposing academy says he stands liable to the greater penalty, doesn't apply to cases in which there's no actual liability. So in other words, in Sanhedrin 79a, it discusses, and 79b, it discusses this point, is that if a person murders another person and they know they can get away with it because they just do it in front of one witness, that person doesn't deserve kapora. It's not in a fit of madness where they did it or whatever the case may be. You need warnings. Maybe he didn't give sufficient time for a warning or whatever. So the one opinion is exactly as Arthur said, is that I can't remember if it was Chizkiah's group or the opposing group offhand. I'd have to look into it. But the point of it is one of the groups definitely said that the person is not deserving to get off the hook. And that the only time you are deserving is if you have a full teshuvah and you actually lose your own life to know what you've done to the person. You've robbed them of any future potential. You've stolen their life. And therefore, your life needs to be stolen. So it's not good enough. So Arthur, that's excellent. That's absolutely excellent.
What did Arthur say? Sorry, because I had Brown knocking at my door here. I had to get up. I missed it a little bit. What did he say?
So Arthur, say it in your own words. It was excellent.
Yeah,
Okay,
Arthur, can you repeat that? Thank you.
Okay, so basically, the reason why you don't get atonement is because you don't deserve atonement in this life and you don't deserve atonement in the next. So you can't get forgiveness, basically. You can't give money, okay, because it's a capital crime, but you don't have enough witnesses to put you to death. And if you had and if you could be put to death, you'd be forgiven in the next life because that's your sacrifice, okay, to get atonement. So that way it's blocking you on both ends. So basically you're going to not land up in a very nice place. In a nutshell.
And you're only going to get punished, just to take it to one step further, if I'm understanding Arthur correctly, is that you're not going to get any atonement, exactly like you're saying, and there's not going to be any is there going to be any compensation though?
You can't compensate for a capital crime. Yeah, but you can't compensate for a capital crime either.
Compensation.
If it's intentional.
Let's leave compensation about how, I know it's a touching issue for you about how the kids are going to get looked after as a separate issue. That's dealt with as a separate issue. We're talking about what's happening to the murderer. Is he going to have an opportunity to atone through Kofer, or is he not? And the reality is, if he doesn't lose his life, deservedly so, for taking the life of another, he won't get that opportunity. Why should he get off with just a heavy payment?
But if he does tshuva, then he can.
No, you can't. That's exactly the point. Is that not for killing a person? If you were negligent where your animal is killed, you haven't killed the person directly. There's a whole different level of culpability whether you were an idiot and you were just insensitive and your animal kept creating drama and you ignored it and your animal killed somebody, believe me, the guilt alone, they would wrap you up for life. That teshuva and paying a kofer where it would make you virtually go broke, where that would, in that particular case, that is sufficient for indirect if your property kills somebody, not if you hire a hitman. If your property kills somebody after you had a very dangerous thing. It's like you were told to fix the brakes of your car again and again and again and again, and your wife nagged you, and your kid took out your car for a jewel and wrote himself off. Does that make sense? It's exactly the same. Here we're talking about a person that murders another individual.
Deliberately. Intentionally.
Even if it was unintentional. It's not premeditated. There's a difference between manslaughter and non-premeditated. Say they got in a bar fight, they all drank a bit much, A hit B, killed him. Oak hit his head against the table, no warning, one witness. Levi was half shikkered and he saw it, and Menachem went to go and relieve himself after 10 beers. So in that particular case, there's one witness, there's no death penalty. If there's no death penalty, the guy's not entitled to make a monetary payment, feel bad, and just make atonement. How's that fair to the family, Gav?
But then he's stuck in this world. He can't do anything.
He's stuck, yes. That's the consequence of murder.
But I always thought you can do tshuva regardless.
Teshuva alone without having the capital death penalty is not sufficient. Simcha has mentioned this many, many times. You can feel as bad as you want. And in fact, Colin asked it once in the shir. He said, but if you feel really bad and you've made it to teshuva, does one still have to get the death penalty? Simcha said, doing a full teshuva is not a full teshuva without the capital death penalty imposed upon him for murder.
Okay, so this only applies really to murder. Eh?
Yes. For a person to kill another person, yes.
Yeah.
So,
all right,
because
we've always been taught, that you can always do tshuva. I listen to a lot of shirim, but not on this specific topic, though. So I understand that. So on this specific topic, yes, I can't remember this whole Simcha discussion. So thank you for that.
Sure, guys, you've all been excellent. Any questions before we log off? Or we good?
No, we're good. Everybody have a good
Shabbos.
Shabbat shalom, lehitraot.
Shabbat
have
shalom,
a great weekend.
And
see you Sunday.
How do you say? And Lishana Habaa Yerushalayim, right?
Amen.
I was talking to me and Damon because you guys are already there. Yeah.
No, he's in Tel Aviv and I'm in Renana. We're not near Jerusalem.
Ramat Khan, actually.
Yeah.
We're saying it's for everybody. I know.